Peace be with you. Dear friends, welcome to Living Flame podcast, website, and Facebook group. Gospel Reflections for the Holy Thursday or Maundy Thursday. Today we have the Gospel from John chapter 13, verses 1 to 15. The Passion narratives explaining the Last Supper we can find also in Matthew's Gospel chapter 26, Mark's Gospel chapter 14, and Luke's Gospel chapter 22. Now in this Gospel passage we find that Jesus was saddened and he was at table. He had come from the Father and he had to return to the Father. He knew fully what was happening. And that is why he had foretold about his own death, that he would be handed over to the chief priests and the elders in Jerusalem. They will persecute him, they will kill him, but then on the third day he will rise again. And at this great moment of the Last Supper, he invited his disciples. Actually, the Passover meal was to be celebrated with the family around. But here we find Jesus' family was the 12 disciples. And that is why Jesus intimately conveys to them his anxiety and his plan. And that's why when he was at table, according to Matthew, Mark, and Luke, he takes bread, breaks it, and gives it to the disciples, saying, "Take this, all of you, eat of it, for this is my body." And then he takes the cup, blesses it, and gives to the disciples, saying that this is my blood shed for the forgiveness of sins. Dear friends, when we reflect on this particular passage, we find Jesus getting up from the table. He takes his robe and then he ties a towel around himself and then takes a basin, pours water in the basin, and then begins to wash the feet of his disciples and wipes them with the towel. And there was a protest on the part of Peter that he wouldn't like that his master is washing his feet. And Jesus said, "If you do not allow me to wash your feet, you will not have share in my kingdom." But then Peter says, "If that is the case, then wash my hands and my head." And Jesus replies, "The one who is clean does not need to wash his head and hands, but only the feet," referring to the unclean person in the group who was Judas. Now, this particular gesture is a reflection of the teaching of Jesus throughout his life. That is why in John's Gospel, chapter 15, verse 15, Jesus said, "I will not call you servants anymore, because I call you friends." Jesus was the friend of his apostles and the followers. That's why there is no greater love than laying down one's life for one's friends. Dear friends, on this day, when we celebrate the Last Supper, the passing over of Jesus to the Father, of the Passover meal in the Old Testament was the passing over of the destructive angel who would slaughter all the firstborn of the Egyptians. But then the Israelites had to sacrifice a lamb without blemish, male, and they had to smear the blood on the lintels of their houses so that the angel of death wouldn't pass over them and he would not destroy their firstborn children. Now, when we look at this gospel passage, we find how Jesus was preparing himself to pass over to the Father. And he had to die on the cross and he would rise again on the third day. But during this meal, he gives them the most important essence of his life. He was the high priest. He was the lamb of sacrifice. He sacrifices himself for saving mankind from their sinfulness. He was the high priest and he was giving the gift of priesthood to his disciples. And then he instituted this greatest sacrament of the Holy Eucharist, where he gives his own body and blood as our sustenance. Thirdly, he gives them the commandment of love. That is, by washing the feet of one another as he had done it towards them, that they would show to the whole world that they were his disciples. Therefore, dear friends, when we celebrate Maundy Thursday, Holy Thursday, let us remember Jesus' great sacrifice for us and the gifts that he has given to us. And this gift we repeat, the memorial, we celebrate every day throughout the year, except on Good Friday. As we meditate on this day, on the passion and death of the Lord, and especially on the Last Supper, let us recall to mind and live this moment as a great gift that we have received, celebrating, participating in the Holy Eucharist that gives us life and makes us understand how important it is for us to receive the body and blood of Christ